Breaking news. This important PSA is brought to you by Manscaped.com. This is your pubic service announcement and the news you've all been waiting for. The Manscaped engineering team has confirmed that they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the USA and Canada. This new trimmer was just released only moments ago, and we are one of the first to get our hands on it and share the news. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code ManagingMadrid at Manscaped.com. And also, Arvind is here to update us on who did not Manscaped tonight.
Yeah, so it's a bit weird, but I think what wasn't Manscaped are the handball laws of the game. You know, when you think of something that's Manscaped, it's smooth, it's clean, it's clear. But with these laws that no one seems to be able to understand, they're fuzzy. You could even say they're all hairy. And a lot of people were wondering about what it was that Zidane went and talked to the ref about after the game. And a lot of theories. Some people said they heard what he said. I have the real thing. Zidane went up and asked him, why haven't the laws been Manscaped, right? Why doesn't Manscaped be put in charge of the laws of the game so this doesn't happen? So that's the real scoop. That's what was actually said. And yeah, we just put Manscaped in charge of everything. We just Manscaped the laws because, as we know, you can Manscape basically anything. We wouldn't have had the issue we had today, and we know very clearly whether it was a penalty or not.
I'm all for Manscaped overtaking FIFA as the governing body of this sport. Having said that, we should also point out that we have a Manscaped Man of the Match award that needs to go to Toni Kroos, who had technically 2 assists because apparently that second goal that Real Madrid scored today counted as an assist. And that probably goes down to just Kroos's robotic brain basically able to calculate getting that ball off of Hazard's back heel and into the back of the net. So 2 assists for Toni Kroos. Congratulations on a Manscaped Man of the Match award. Listeners, get 20% off and free shipping with the code ManagingMadrid at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at Manscaped.com and use code ManagingMadrid. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. Worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Hello and welcome to a late Sunday night edition of the Managing Madrid podcast. This was supposed to be one of the better podcasts of the season. We had an amazing weekend. We had a Las Blancas win. We had Barca draw against Atleti. We had Castilla qualifying for the Segunda playoffs, and then we had Brahim Diaz sinking Juve today. And all that we needed to do was to come away with a victory after playing a really, really good game against Sevilla, having the majority of the chances, majority of the possession. And we come up short, and some of that is controversial, and a lot of it is controversial, and we are going to break it down as best we can. So joining me, Kiyan, Sobhani, is Arvind. How you doing?
Not doing amazing, obviously, but doing a lot better than I was after the Chelsea game, which was probably the most down I'd been all season. And you know, I guess it's more a reaction to the performance. I don't think this was by any means like some kind of masterclass that we got robbed of, but I didn't think we performed terribly. There was some bad luck, as we'll get into, but I think we performed fairly well, especially given our physical state, against an opponent that I think is pretty similar to us in terms of quality and style. And so I can accept stuff like this, but that's just me, and I know a lot of people are quite furious, most particularly because of the penalty calls or ones that weren't called. And I understand that. And yeah, everyone who's mad right now, your rage is valid. And I get it. And we'll try to talk through this result and see if it, I guess, acts as a form of therapy.
I don't have many things in common with Zidane other than the fact that I love the club. But he is a better footballer than me. That's a bit controversial, I know, but he's also a better football manager than me. and he's in a different universe than I am. One of the things I resonate with him is that he hates talking about referees, and so do I. He did come out and say that today is the exception, and we can get through that. It'll have to be the exception. It was a big talking point either way, and while Real Madrid were robbed in a lot of ways, I will say the true victims here, the true victims of oppression are Omar, Arvind, and myself, because we had so many notes ready to go from the sequence that led to Benzema getting hacked by Banu in the box. Everything from Vinicius blocking Suso, carrying the ball, Asensio's off-ball movement, everything that led up to that penalty. And then it just got turned on us. Like someone took the gun and flipped it on our head, and then all of a sudden Sevilla was scoring a penalty. I saw a lot of comments. I don't know if they were true or not, but they're just funny to imagine that, people seeing that Benzema got called and Real Madrid got a penalty, going to the bathroom and coming back confused that Rakitic was taking the penalty. It was the first time ever that's happened, according to Mr. Chip, that a VAR penalty has been overturned for a VAR penalty on the opposite side of the field. So, we're going to leave that for a little bit, maybe towards the second half. Or do you want to take that early? Would you rather get that out of the way now, or do you want to bring that forward? What do you want to do?
I'd rather talk about as much football as we can before we get to that, because I feel like that's going to dominate the second half. And, after that, I'm not sure how much happened that could have altered the game. And I feel like that would just dominate that side of it. So I'd prefer to get into the football first, but it could go either way. If you want to get it out of the way, shoot.
I'm not sure what's better for the ratings, if we table it and people just like furiously skip ahead, and we just purposely don't put timestamps on it so people have to listen to all this tactical discussion first, or we can just jump ahead. I will say, I do think it's worth getting out of the way now, partly because just to ride the wave here and ride the momentum a little bit. I think that call was big enough that we're going to be talking about it a few years from now. We're going to be writing articles about it. Be like in years past, if there was Minuto Mágico where Tamudo scores against Barcelona and Ruud van Nistelrooy scores against Zaragoza in the same minute. This is not necessarily on that level, but it's up there in terms of how much La Liga changed within 1 minute based on a decision from the referee. I think it's pretty prominent. I think the discourse this is the way it kind of unfolded on social media. Initially, it was that this is the arc. This is the timeline. If I can get this accurately. Initially, when Sevilla got that penalty and we saw the replays and the way it touched Militao's hand and all that, the discourse quickly began that wasn't a penalty. This is robbery. And then when people realized that maybe that is a penalty, then people started to dig up all the other instances in La Liga where this wasn't a penalty, and start to compare it to that. And then I think what I think kind of shifted ultimately, anyways, in my view, this is what my perception is now and interpretation is now. And this is what I think Zidane hinted at too. Because what Zidane said after the game was that, because first of all, we saw the scenes where after the final whistle, he and Cruz scored the referees. And they asked for an explanation, and then Zidane talks on TV, and then he goes to the press conference after. And he says, I just wanted an explanation, and I don't accept the referee's explanation. And I do accept that Militao, that was a handball. However, Sevilla had a similar handball that didn't get called. And then he was asked about it again, and he said, there were two handballs in this game, rather. One for Sevilla, one for Real Madrid. Only one of them got called. The other one didn't. And I think and you and I were on Slack, we're trying to figure out which handball he talked about. You found it. And to be honest, that's the one I remember now after looking at it. For some reason, I had forgotten which one it was. And I thought maybe he was talking about before the ball hits Militao's hand, it comes off a Sevilla hand first, which it didn't. So I thought maybe he didn't realize that, but then you reminded me of the play that he was actually referring to, which was in the 35th minute, right? Where 52nd minute. 51:35. That's why I said 35. 51:35. And that So I think his point was either none of them are penalties or both of them are penalties. And my interpretation of the rules, even because at first I honestly thought it was a penalty. Now I'm looking at the rules because FIFA actually went through and revised the rules in March of this year. I don't know if anyone realizes it, or at least I didn't see many people talking about it. A few weeks ago, they released a clarification of what the handball rule is. And based on that, and based on these two sequences, the Sevilla handball and the Real Madrid handball, my interpretation is I think neither of them should have been a penalty. And I get why people, by the way, are going back and finding clips of older calls that weren't called or that went against us. And it went against us today too. I get why people do that. They're pointing out the inconsistencies, and that's totally fair. I also I don't think it's a conspiracy against one team. I know some people will not see eye to eye with me on that, and I'm okay with that. I generally don't believe in those kinds of conspiracies, but I do believe in bad refereeing and incompetency and bad interpretation of the rules, which affects everybody. And I do think it's fair to say that Real Madrid haven't been on the positive side of that for a long time now. And you can look at the stats and the amount of penalties that were called against us. I think we've had 3 in the past calendar year or so. It's not a huge thing. We're not getting favorable calls in those situations. I get it. I personally believe that it's just really, really bad, incompetent refereeing. I don't dispute the fact that that's what's happening here. I also think something similar to this, but not quite on the scale, was remember when Modric got a red card for a tackle? I don't know who was against now. I think it was against Betis. I'm not sure. And on that same foul was that happened against us. The same kind of tackle where players got off scotch-free. And so there are a lot of inconsistencies like that drive fans nuts. And I completely sympathize with that emotion and that frustration. And the fact that literally that kind of swung the title race. I mean, we come away with a 2-1 win here, or we go up 2-1 in that scenario. It's a totally different ballgame, especially because we had Sevilla in our back pocket, I thought, for at least defensively anyway. And we just needed to start converting our chances. So my feeling is that neither of these two should have been a penalty. And I'll just go through what FIFA said in those rules, and because I think it'd be useful for the listeners to listen to this. FIFA states, as the interpretation of handball incidents has not always been consistent due to incorrect applications of the law, the members confirmed that not every touch of a player's hand or arm with the ball is an offense. In terms of the criterion of the hand and arm making a player's body unnaturally bigger, it was confirmed that referees should continue to use their judgment in determining the validity of the hand-arm position in relation to the player's movement in that specific situation. Following this clarification, it is a handball offense if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand or arm, for example, moving the hand or arm towards the ball, or touches the ball with their hand or arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of their hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. By having their hand or arm in such a position, the player takes a risk of their hand or arm being hit by the ball and being penalized. And I think in this situation, neither of those apply to Militao. I think if there's a slight case of him making his body unnaturally bigger, it's just that, like Asensio said after the game, he's not even seeing the ball. He doesn't know where the ball is, and if he's putting himself at risk, the ball takes a deflection off of his shoulder first and then goes up to his arm. I just don't think that fits. That criteria fits. And in my opinion, I don't think either of these two instances were a foul. And the fact that I actually say, in my opinion, is a problem in itself, because this is a rule that is based on opinion, and that's a huge problem still to me.
So the main line for me in what you read was the being a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. So I guess that's where you could justify it not being a handball for Militao, because you can say that the movement of it hitting off his shoulder and the way he's jumping in the air, like that becomes justifiable then. So that's the key wording for me in terms if you wanted to argue it that way. I saw it being given because of like the unnaturally bigger thing, right? Because his arm is flailing out, clearly it touches his hand. It hinges on whether you think that was a justifiable movement by Militao, essentially. And I could see it both ways after really like digging into this wording, and I can understand why people would be furious that was given. For the majority of the time through the game and like coming into this pod, I thought it was a handball. So that was my feeling coming in. I'm less sure now reading the specific wording. But I don't know, and maybe this is something that's in the rules that wasn't clarified here, but I'm not necessarily sure why, it deflecting off the shoulder first matters. But I guess that might be part of the wording, and I'm just based off the text I'm seeing here, but I think that may be part of the wording in terms of justified body movement. And so if that's the case there, then maybe that's not it. So I guess that's what I'll say about that. And then in terms of the Sevilla incident, I think it's less clear than this one. So if you don't think this one was a penalty, I don't see how the Sevilla one could be either. And it honestly took me forever to figure out whether it was John Jordan or Diego Carlos who had touched it. And after like looking at multiple replays, I think it was Diego Carlos. But from the referee's perspective, I assume they didn't give that one, which they also looked at on VAR, or VAR looked at it and didn't call the referee over, was the hand was closer to the body, whereas for Militao's it wasn't. So from the referee's perspective, I think they were focusing on the unnatural position, and they made a call on the Sevilla one and ours based on that. I do think the refereeing standard in La Liga is not very good, but in this particular situation, it looks like a very tough call for me. Both of them look very tough, and I don't know. I kind of feel for the referee here, which is not a very popular thing to say at all. And in terms of whether like this is like some kind of conspiracy around it, like, I mean, that's nonsense. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That Barcelona, Real Madrid are two of the most popular clubs across the world and the biggest brands in the league would be, for some reason, there'd be an agenda against them, as if it wouldn't be the best thing for the league for either Barcelona or Real Madrid to win it. Which, yeah, I mean, just a little tangent there, but I just felt I needed to say that. So those are my feelings on both incidents, which is what the only thing anyone's going to talk about this game, and what I think the referee was thinking. And ultimately, I think it was a pretty tough call because the handball rules, like these clarifications, I don't know how much it actually clarified anything. And
yeah,
it just needs to be, they really need to look at the wording and like try to segment it down so that cases become as clear as possible. Right. And if it means just not calling certain things, then maybe that's what we have to do, because this is one of the greatest decisions I've seen since the handball rule was changed a year ago or a couple of years ago. And when it's that great to me, I don't know if I'd be furious about it being called. Given the stakes of the game, given what this means for the title race, I can understand why emotions are running so high.
So part of the reason it's also very fuzzy is because it also they've changed the rules so much of late. I mean, they had new rule changes in 2020, which stated that if it's a handball, intentional or not, it doesn't matter. It's a handball. They changed it again recently and said, it has to be down to the referee's discretion whether it was intentional or not based on this criteria. I think the point about the deflection is an interesting one because a lot of people are using that as to why this shouldn't have been a penalty. So according to the rules, so in 2019, 2020, that season, they said that, and quote, a handball will not be awarded if the ball touches a player's hand or arm directly from their own head/body/foot or the head/body/foot of another player who is close or nearby. I saw that's where it comes from. And
is this like the full rules, not the clarification one?
No, that's the full rules, not the clarification one.
Okay.
But then a year later they changed it again to say it's only if the deflection clearly makes no difference to the ball touching a hand or arm that is clearly extended away from the body. So that again, I think this is where the issue is. So I almost don't blame anyone for not knowing what the rule is, because how can you expect any consumer to know the rule, because it's changed every 2 seconds.
So I think in the first one you said, in that version, this is clearly not a penalty. But in the second version, where you might even need to repeat that for me, but when it's like doesn't make a difference or something like that,
if it doesn't,
that becomes so gray.
Yeah. Because
I think you could argue it makes a difference, but at the same time you can argue what is Militao. So like, yeah, I think it's really difficult for fans, but I also think, like, given how vague that is and how much leeway there is, it's inevitable that you're going to come to a place where a referee will give something one way and give another thing not the other way. That's just how it's going to be, like, when it's that level of subjectivity. And yeah, that I don't know. I kind of understand the ref's decision in that context, because it's not an easy decision.
So we can actually talk about football now, and probably, I don't know, at some point it's inevitable that maybe the referee.
Well, we probably lost half the listeners because of what I said, but yeah, we can move on to the football now.
So after a really disappointing Chelsea game that we shall never speak of again, because we spoke 3 hours about it that night on the podcast. But by the way, thanks to everyone who came out that night. That was that made us feel a lot better, like, collectively. Awesome turnout on Zoom, and welcome to all our new patrons. So that aside,